Hello, everyone, and welcome to Real People, a podcast that highlights some amazing guests who are doing important work to make it possible for people to thrive and be their best, both at work and in the broader realm of living life to its fullest. I'm Harold Hillman, Managing Director of Sigmoid Curve Consulting Group, based in Auckland, New Zealand. I am particularly honored today to host Russell Pickering, the founder and principal of the Pickering Group. Let me tell you a little bit about Russell. He is one of New Zealand's leading specialists. I'd say he is New Zealand's leading specialist in effective communication, business storytelling, and presentation training. Prior to founding the Pickering Group, Russell ran Auckland-based communication skills consultancy, Speakeasy, and established himself as an expert trainer, facilitator, and coach in the field of business communication skills development. He has helped thousands of people in some of New Zealand's and Australia's most visible organizations become more confident and compelling communicators. I've experienced that firsthand working with Russell with a number of my clients. Russell thrives in the dynamic intersection of the arts and commerce. Originally training as a professional actor and director, Russell won a Bob Hope Scholarship to study for his Master of Fine Arts in Acting at Meadows School of the Arts, Southern Methodist University in Texas. As an actor, he has appeared in commercial television, feature film, and on regional theater stages throughout the US and New Zealand. More recently, Russell completed his MBA as part of Auckland University's New Zealand Executive Program. His recent clients include Mercury, DLA Piper, Zero, Vind, Coca-Cola Amatil, Livestock Improvement, and Office Max, an impressive list of companies that you've worked with, Russell. Welcome to Real People, and thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you, Harold. It's awesome to be here. Thank you.
What a year. Let's say, 2020 will be an asterisk year.
Man.
In all of our lives, if this was 2019 or maybe 2021, we just dive right in. But I've got to, get just how are you doing? How have you been tracking? What meaning have you been making out of 2020?
Yeah, I'm fine. It's fine. It's certainly intense, and all of the different ways to describe it. It's kind of to the point now where it is, it is what it is. So, yeah. Initially, it was, to see your pipeline of work for the next period of time disappear in a matter of days was terrifying.
That's right.
Really scary. And then once things settled down and you got into the rhythm of the lockdown, you realize there's a chance to refocus and use time that you don't normally have. And that energy that comes with that time and place it in different areas that you might have been wanting to work on for a period of time. So for me, I've turned quite introspective over that period, which is interesting because you'd know me to be quite an extrovert.
That's right.
And using that time to think, I've always wanted to write a book. And I thought, well, what better year than to be able to use the time that you have to write that book and to focus on that. So that's really where my energy has. And it's been a balm, if you like. It's been a process that has given me a good sense of purpose and engagement and something to wake up every morning and focus on. The first iteration of that has been the white paper that I sent to you. And I'll make available to the listeners as well. And then hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have some sort of first draft ready to kick off the new year with. So that's where it's shifted. Although, to be fair, we're lucky here in New Zealand, and things in terms of face-to-face training have recently started to pick up again for me, which is wonderful. And it's so great to be back in front of people.
It is. It is.
I was like, oh, thank goodness.
It is. You're an extrovert. I'm an introvert. So, I leaned into the first month or so with vigor because, I naturally go introspective. What I've discovered is, to your point earlier, this scenario really has, number one, it's brought vulnerability up close and personal to every single person I know, from CEOs right down through my grandsons. And so we've had to encounter this notion that we have to get good at living in an imperfect world. In an imperfect world, we have to be able to your point, adapt and adjust. And so it sounds like you have, particularly in terms of training, probably in addition to physical, in the same room training, have you expanded in terms of virtual?
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, I could sit here and, you know, I'm going to be honest today. Not that I'm not honest always, but it's, you know, I probably from a business perspective, I should be sitting here and saying how we could just get a greater impact as virtual as we could face to face and, you know, really embrace it. I don't like it. I don't like it. I love it for this. I love it for this kind of stuff, right?
Yes,
Which is cool, and it's a great way to think about meeting with clients rather than having to go in and, you know, saving all of that cost in terms of carb and all those things. Yes. But when it comes to actually training presentation skills, public speaking, persuasive speaking, that face-to-face connection that you get with people is so much more challenging via a virtual medium. You can do it, but but it's not as, I find it just so, it's harder work. And when it comes to training, you spend so much of your time searching, feeling out there for some sort of reaction to get back, and you see a sea of faces that are just looking like they're engaged in something other than what it is you're talking about. Sure. So I find it quite challenging, and I'm quite happy to return as fast as I can to face-to-face training for that period. But I'm not saying it's impossible. It's just I miss an audience. I miss the energy you get from it. I miss the connection you have with it. Yeah,
I can relate to everything you're saying, and to your point, we are fortunate in New Zealand. Unlike other nations where it's still, people are not very anxious about sitting in the same physical space together. We in New Zealand are demonstrating that, there is the other side to all of this. Now, speaking of training, I met you in a sort of a training context. This was over a decade ago. A good friend of ours, Glenn Peterson, and I launched a program on executive presence. And we sort of informally referred to executive presence as someone who has that X factor. And we wanted to put together a program, a 5-day experience for people where they were deeply immersed with 7 other people, so 8 people in total. And we brought in a few coaches, adjunct coaches. And Russell was one of those coaches. And it was from the very moment that I met you, and certainly watching you with our participants, helping them understand what it means to viscerally connect with an audience. And in terms of being present, you were such an exemplar of this thing called X Factor. And so you had immediate credibility with our participants. Again, your module was the highest rated, always, every single program for 10 years, your module was the highest rated because of that experience. And so what I wanted to find out from you is around this notion of X Factor or presence. Did you have that as a kid? Were you like this compelling kid who, when you walked into a room, everybody just sort of turned to experience you? Or have you been purposeful across your life, and particularly your professional career, to master the art and science of connection?
Yeah, the latter, certainly purposeful. I was an invisible kid, very unremarkable across every spectrum, unremarkable academically, unremarkable personality-wise, unremarkable until high school, when I discovered drama. And it wasn't about me, it was about a character and characters, and what those characters would unlock in me and enable me to explore. And I found a way into, I would describe as my presence, a place where I could feel present. Because up until that point, I did everything not to be present in environments because it would be exposing, for whatever reason. I was something that I didn't want to draw any attention to myself. But on a stage, I could, and I could do it in a safe environment. So it was something that I just really latched onto. And it was also something that I felt like I was good at, you know, it was something that felt right. And I could practice, and it was a craft, and I got better and better and better at it. So it was an escape. And it wasn't until, but you know, being comfortable on a stage is different from being comfortable, you know, in a business environment when you're talking to a group of people. Those are two very different things. And exposing myself and my own ideas didn't come till a lot later. I could embody a character, no problem. Give me a script and give me lines. But have me go and talk about a concept that I believed in, or I wanted to sell, or I wanted to communicate. It was a completely different thing, right? It's much harder. So that didn't come till a lot later. But so the short answer to your question is, look, no, I was just very, very shy and very very introverted, I suppose. And a key to unlocking, it was a domino effect. So once I found theatre sports, which is where it really started, that gave me confidence. And so then I got the lead role in the high school play. And it gave me something that I felt like I could do and focus on. I didn't feel like I was any particularly good at anything else, but I felt like I had a connection here. So that led me on a particular journey, and I loved it. And it sort of iterated itself all the way along to get me to here.
No, I'm listening to you talk about yourself as a kid, and an introverted, shy kid, and because it's sort of the opposite of how I have experienced you, certainly as an adult. And I was reflecting then back on the fact that I was I wanted to be largely invisible as a kid. Now, that was related to my experience of growing up as a gay kid who didn't feel safe.
And I think that would be part of it for me. Yeah, as well, because definitely I'm gay, and I think I am anyway. But I'm still experimenting.
But got to tell Andrew about that one.
Yeah. It's like, you're what? And definitely that's part of it. And you know, just not wanting to draw your attention, and then suddenly you're on as a character on a stage. Not only can you sort of embody this thing really wholeheartedly, but also it tended, you know, the theatre area tended to draw all of the kids that were a little bit different, right? That didn't fit into the general mainstream of the rugby playing kid, right? All that. And so there was a little tribe of us that all felt, you know, that we all loved Absolutely Fabulous on a Tuesday night and things like that. It's like, there's something going on here.
It's almost like what you're describing is an alter ego, that the stage gave you an opportunity to invigorate and energize your psyche, and that probably as you progressed in that realm, it became more of your core persona.
That's right.
Where you were more comfortable.
Yeah, and you'd like to think that you're remarkable, but I think that journey is very, very, very common for a lot of people who get solace, who get reinforcement from the stage. It's a place where they feel a sense of belonging. For sure.
Is there an art and science to human connection, and particularly for leaders who need to influence people in terms of not only how they think, but how they feel, and in many cases, how they will then act in that case there?
Absolutely. I'd describe it as a craft. You know, it's something that you hone and that you work on and you get better at. But it has to start from a place of presence. And we'll talk about second circle later. It has to start from there. But everything that layers on top of that is the craft that allows your presence to shine through. So say, for example, you know that if you have to deliver, say, a big TED talk or a large conference, there is an element of needing to be present and being fully in yourself and authentic, but there's also an element of craft. You need to be heard. You need to be understood. You know, you need to be able to claim your space, all of those things as well. And that stuff is learned and developed and practiced like a craft is. And
Sure.
so it's those two things coming together, I think, that become very important. I'll hear a lot from my participants and from my leaders. It's like, oh, I just don't have the gift of the gab, right? Which is, I just don't have that inherent thing. I've never been good at it. I hate it. And I think that everybody can learn to be a more compelling communicator. However, I do think it is easier for some people than others, right? I think that yes, some people need to work harder for longer to get to a place, but it is possible to grow, absolutely. And I've seen it many, many times. And part of it starts with just believing that you can, right? Having a growth mindset around it rather than a fixed one. So understanding that you can improve, you can get better. There is a process to it. Here is a process that you can use to ensure that you get better along the way. But it's not quick. It's you work at it for a good period of time.
I've seen you again over the last decade in front of close to 100 groups. And one of the things that I really admire about the way you connect, the way you teach, the way you connect with that group of people sitting there is you seem to trust your intuition. There are the skills and, the techniques and those types of things, which might be part of the craft that you described there. But I would imagine that that you, in your work with executives, probably encourage them to just trust their intuitive sense around what needs to happen now.
Yeah, there's a lot of advantages to the work that I do with you. So just so the listeners know, what tends to happen is when I go in and work with your executives, they get given a wonderful piece of text, and it's either a speech, a famous speech, or a famous piece of written text. So anything from, say, Kennedy through to Oscar Wilde or whoever. And what that text does is it acts as a key to unlock the presence and the power of the deliverer and to connect that to allow them to connect those ideas in that text to the audience.
Yes.
And it's an amazing thing. And it's the power of words and great words, and how these amazing words can infuse you with the necessary energy that you need to be compelling to communicate those things.
Yes.
And so often I will get a call up from somebody, it might be an HR director or a GM, and say, hey, I need you to work with such and such. They're just not delivering well, or they just can't get this message across, or they're not compelling, or they're not engaging. And it'll always come from the perspective that it's their performativity or their delivery that's the issue. And 99% of the time, it's the message that they're delivering that's the problem.
Yes.
Because when you have a message that has an amazing sense of urgency, a desire to connect, a need to connect, that the deliverer can really connect with and get in behind in a truthful way, it infuses you with the necessary energy to deliver that in a compelling and engaging and authentic way when you have that alignment. And if you don't have that message right in the first place, it's very difficult to deliver it in a way that's compelling and engaging and authentic. So starting what we do on the program, we already have this amazing message. So all you need to do is just get the participants out of their own way and just, giving respect to the text and respect to the audience that they're connecting to. And it just happens. And that's what I think, that's where they get the joy from it. It's a wonderful feeling.
It's fascinating to watch. I am often there in the session with Russell, and it is fascinating to watch how in a half hour, the person standing there is emotively now connected with the words, and your emphasis on the power of words, which many of us just sort of deliver sloppily or in a lackadaisical way, certainly not in a purposeful way. So I've seen it firsthand. Now let's segue to Second Circle, because you mentioned that a few minutes ago. Of all the wonderful things that I've learned from you, Second Circle has been almost like a gift. When I think about you, decades from now, when I'm reflecting on my life in the final week or so, I'm going to reflect on you and this gift called Second Circle, which you introduced in the program. And I have been able to extrapolate that in many ways associated with how people wear vulnerability. Now, so let me just ask you, would you tell our listeners, what is Second Circle and why is it important in terms of connection?
Sure. So, I wish it was my idea, but as we know, it comes from a wonderful woman called Patsy Rodenberg. So Patsy, I've got a story to tell you about Patsy in a second, but I'll do this explanation first. So Patsy was head of voice for the Royal National Theatre in the UK. She still is head of voice at Guildhall School of Speech and Drama. And she is one of the most, if not the world's preeminent vocal coaches. She's worked with every great British actor that you know, from Helen Mirren to Ian McKellen to Judi Dench. She's worked with them. And she created this wonderful model called the Second Circle. And I'll relate it back to originally it was designed to help actors and to be more present when they're performing, but it's relating really to anybody who find themselves under pressure when they have to deliver some sort of message, or just under pressure in general, and what happens to you and your energy. And she describes them as 3 circles: first, second, and third circle. So if you imagine yourself delivering, say, a really big presentation to the board, or a big TED talk, or a big conference presentation, and you're under that kind of pressure, Patsy argues that when you're there, you will have a tendency to be drawn toward a particular type of energy, first or third. And first circle energy people, when under pressure, take on the energy of self and withdrawal. So you might be up there in front of that audience and just have this tendency to make yourself want to be smaller. You might not want to make eye contact. You might and ah and titch a lot. You might close your body off physically. You might want to back away. You might turn and read the PowerPoint a lot. So it's almost as if all of your energy wants to fall back into yourself. And there is no intentional presence to it. Everything is about making yourself go backwards, if you like, or smaller, or more invisible, or quieter. So that's very, very disconnecting for an audience when we see that, because it's uncomfortable and we have empathy and we look at it and think, gosh, are they okay? Or they don't look confident, or I'm not sure if I trust them.
That's right.
So the opposite extreme of that is third circle, and equally disconnecting for an audience. So imagine that person preparing for that TED talk inhabiting third circle, and rather than self and withdrawal, they take on the energy of bluff and force. So it tends to be, ladies and gentlemen, have I got the deal for you? It's generalized energy, forced outward, often too aggressive, often lacks the ability to listen or be present in a space. It's forced and it's bluff and it's overly performative. And as an audience, you look at it and think, oh, it could well be very slick, but you think, oh, that just feels wrong. That doesn't feel authentic. It feels too performative, for want of a better word.
Manufactured.
Manufactured and authentic. Or it could be too aggressive, or too, really tyrannical in its worst sense, right? Abusive in its worst sense. And that's third circle. Now, she says that in the middle, there's a place called second circle, which is the energy of presence and connection. And it exists not from trying to guilt the audience into listening or being present with you, which is first circle, or forcing them into listening to you, which is third circle, but just being really present with them and connected to them and sitting in your own sense of authenticity. And it's in that place as a communicator that you are at your most powerful.
Yes.
And there's a difference between force and power. So you do not need to be forceful to be powerful.
Yes.
And it's when you're in your second circle, in that place, you become just very, very compelling. You watch somebody communicating in second circle, and you can't take your eyes off them.
That's
It's
right.
just you're just there.
That's right.
And you're engaged and you're connected to them. It's the energy of connection. So that's the model.
I like the way you describe that, because the essence of trust is connection. Mm-hmm. And you're right. If you're there but not there in first circle, sort of like you and me as kids, we probably spend a lot of time in first circle. and later in life have learned that it really is connecting with people. If you don't need to be the smartest person in the room, even if you're the senior leader, or you don't have to be the dominant voice, it does help to listen to others, particularly if you've invited them to a meeting to get their perspective.
That's right.
Being a third circle doesn't help, does it?
No, and further to that point, I just wanted to tell you that I went to a Zoom webinar with Patsy just recently. And it's the first, and it was absolutely amazing. I was weeping.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing because it had been about, there were a lot of people on the Zoom call, but she was just talking, using the lens of second circle to look at the world today. And she had these wonderful quotes that I just grabbed. And, she said, every play that we look at, every great piece of literature, every play comes down to power and the use of power. And she says, she called it the great dilemma, which is power must not be misused, but power must be used. So I'm like, that is really, really interesting. So it is, and that's exactly it, right? Power must not be misused, but the dilemma is it must be used.
It must be used.
So in that friction and that tension of what all of these great works of literature and Shakespeare is about, and she was talking to that, and she was talking about the tyrant.
Yes.
And she says, when you look at a tyrant, we all know who we're talking about.
We know exactly who we're talking about.
So you look at a tyrant from the lens of the circles, and especially the appearance of tyrants and say the plays of Shakespeare. She said, the sole purpose of a tyrant is to keep you out of second circle.
Yes.
To keep you out of it.
Wow.
She says,
that is deep.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is.
And I'm like, that is so true. And she said, look at America now. That is a country where they're either screaming at each other in third circle. Or they're hiding in first.
That's right.
Because the role of the tyrant is to keep you.
Republican Congress is hiding in first. While the tyrant is in third, with most Americans going, what the heck? But it's a great example.
It's amazing. And so I think that lens is so powerful across all manner of contexts when we look at it. It was really cool.
That is powerful. What do you enjoy? Thank you for sharing that. I would love to hear more about it because, to your point, Patsy Rodenberg really is compelling. And I, again, have found, particularly the way you describe it, it is such a powerful self-awareness tool. In the first instance, self-awareness being core, of course, to leadership effectiveness. And it has resonated so well with so many of my clients, both individually and in teams. And so I just appreciate you introducing me to that from Patsy's work, but also just your very unique and compelling way of laying it out. Russell, what do you enjoy the most about the work you do with leaders? What keeps you moving and energized?
Two things, I think. One, seeing the difference. That's always good. Seeing a difference. And when people feel a difference is always really wonderful. And I've had lovely comments and about just often you're dealing with people in a public speaking or presentation skills. You're dealing with people who have built up frames over the course of their lifetime, often negative, about their ability to be compelling in front of an audience. And when you can share with people a way to readjust that frame in themselves, and then when you see it begin to work and you see them begin to find some of the joy that you can have from being a compelling speaker and being in front of an audience, and some of the duty that you need to take from it, which is a good frame for people, then that's really, it's a wonderful feeling. So that's that. The other part of it that I love is I like to consider myself if I was to describe myself, I often to say to business people, I'm like a script editor and an acting coach and a director, but for business people. So
I like that.
The creativity that comes with working with people around shaping their message, practicing the delivery of that message to a point where they can really connect that message to an audience has a lot of similarities to the process of creating a script, rehearsing a script for an audience. It's a similar process. You start along the way, and it takes time, and it's a similar iteration, a creativity process. So I get a lot of sustenance. My creative soul is sustained more than I thought it would be.
Sure.
From that, and I enjoy that sense of, I love directing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love it. It's fun. Yeah, it's really fun. And when you're jiving with the person and they're digging it too, you can see it, and it becomes really fun for people.
It does.
Like, I'm really, really digging this.
It does become fun, and it is something where, again, you're just asking them to just tap more into that right brain creative space. But I hadn't thought about it until you just unfolded it there. You really are. It's the same as on a stage with actors. When you're working with executives, it's a bit of the same process, isn't it? In the sense of connection to the words, fun, creativity, and impact.
Yeah, but there is an important distinction, and that is the intention is not to entertain. So, and I think and that can often get in the way, because people will have a strong frame that they think in order for them to be effective, they need to be an entertainer or an actor or extroverted. And that is absolutely not the case. And I think that's a real problem that has come out of a lot of the approach in the past to what I would consider the misguided focus on the performative elements of a communicator. So things like posture, gesture, facial expressions, eye contact. I think those are important. But when people really connect to the message and own the message and own who they are, then more often than not, they can deliver it in a compelling way. They're not having to fill on all occasions, a 1,200 seat auditorium and do it every night for a 12-week season. It's just, so it's different.
It is different.
And so I like to think of it rather as a communication frame where you're there to be of value to your audience rather than to be evaluated by them.
It is that's a great distinction. It really is an important one in that sense. It reinforcing what you mentioned earlier, which is above all else, be your authentic self.
It starts there.
Definitely. Now
but within reason. Right? So I'm like, within reason.
Come into second circle in an authentic way is what you're saying, because some people interpret authenticity as, well, I'm rare, I'm unique, I'm third circle, I'm fourth circle. But that's really disconnecting. So I totally get what you're saying in the sense of stay calibrated with your audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely. Now, listen, I've never really asked you this question in the sense that I've known you in the business world. You've made a huge splash in the business world here in New Zealand and Australia. And now, has your work in the corporate space pulled you off center from your passion for acting and directing? You just mentioned, of course, that there are some similarities, even though you made the great point that when executives are standing up, they are not entertainers. They're there to be impactful as leaders who can influence an audience. But in that sense of theater and stage, I've never seen you in that realm. And yet that's what really awakened your spirit a couple of decades ago. So do you ever do you think sometimes about moving a little bit more into that old world of yours?
Well, I don't feel like I ever left it. It's so an intrinsically part of me. I still dream. I say, actors have what's called the actor's dream. And it'll be something to do with going on stage and not having rehearsed enough, or forgetting your lines, or forgetting a key part of your costume, or being naked, or whatever it might be. And every actor will tell you that they have a version of that dream, and it stays with them. And I've had that all my life, and I still have it. It's like, it's more like I transition into different focuses. But what's really interesting is I find that now that I've sort of got a little bit of age behind me, I'm beginning to see definite stages in my progression. And, starting off with, if you imagine sort of three aspects of a Venn diagram coming together, there's the creative side of me and the theatre side of me, which is there. And that's really been exploring the first part of my life. And then combined with that, there's the queer side of me, or the gay side of me, which is intersecting. And the other part of that is the business or the commercial side, which has certainly been intersecting over the last 10 years.
Yes.
So I feel like the next stage, the next 10 years ahead, if you imagine those three things now intersecting, that there's something in the combination of those three things that has further exploration for me. And I like that idea. I feel like I'm just now coming into my own. I feel like I've got a uniqueness and a perspective of building my own IP more and more, and it's given me the opportunity. And so I feel like there's a lot of creativity and stuff to explore over the next 10 years that I'm very, very excited and motivated about in this whole field around what I'm doing. Where that might lead, who knows? Sure. I do think, though, there is just an inherent part of me that will step back onto the stage in a play at some point, because it's just purely part of, I'd like the challenge. I don't even know if I could remember my bloody lines. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's the whole discipline of just having to learn a script again. That's been a while.
Man, it would be so cool to see you. It would be so cool to see you on stage. And as you were talking, I was thinking, of course, the golden circle popped into my head, and I was thinking that it sounds like you are started to aim for your why sooner than I did. I was in my late 40s, almost 50 years old before I landed on my why. It sounds like, in terms of just how you laid out those three principles or themes there, you are circling in on your why, in a sense of what will invigorate you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I feel it's heading that way. There was a couple of experiences that I had just before lockdown, where I did a couple of speaking gigs, and it was, and I really was exploring those three themes in the speaking gigs, and it was such a fun experience to tell some of those stories that I'd never told on a stage before. Some of my coming out stories, some of my earlier stories around the experiences that I had in the theatre, and having it be relevant and engaging, and the lessons learned from that for a business audience was a really cool combination of those three things. And I'm certainly excited to explore that more. It was just good. Every actor wants a new material, It's like, this is good. This is good. And it's also, I think the time is right, because there's a really interesting point that for my younger audiences, I think there is a different expectation. And whereas 10 years ago, I was never in the closet, but it wasn't something I would never really actively mention that I was gay. But now I find that my younger audiences in particular will listen to me more and engage with me more when I tell them up front, or when I let it slip, or when I just sort of strategically place it into the conversation. And, I remember having a chat with Andrew about it, and he says, "Oh, that's funny." I said, "Why do you think that's the case?" He said, "Well, it's probably because nobody wants to listen to straight middle-aged white men anymore." I was like, "Oh yeah, right. Time to leverage that."
That's right.
Because am like middle-aged white balding. I need something to make me a little bit different.
That is right. That is right. You do make it work. You definitely make it work. Hey, let's finish out to just hear a little bit more about your book. What's the tentative title? What's it about?
Yeah, so the tentative title is Persuasive Speaking for the Considered Leader. And essentially, it's a call to action. So I am sick and tired of the braggadocios, the bombastics, the loudmouths, the tricksters, the blatant liars. And I think it's time for the quiet, considered leaders to really let their voice be heard, step into the spotlight, and be active. And in fact, the way that I'm framing it is that it is their duty. they have a duty to the world.
I love that.
An absolute duty right now, because we cannot go on the way that we are going on. Confidence should not replace competence.
That's right.
And there are far too many people out there that project a huge amount of confidence, and there is absolutely no correlation to confidence. To competence. And that's a really, I mean, there's a lot of science to back that up now. It's really, really interesting.
Yes.
And how manipulated we are as people by displays of confidence.
Yes.
Right? How easily manipulated we are, and how we need to, and so there's two things that happen. Not only do we need to be cognizant of that and inoculated from this unwanted charisma and be aware of it when we see it and how easily we're manipulated by it, we also need to empower our quiet, considered, ethical, humble leaders with a sense of humility to instill us with a sense of purpose. And we're seeing across the world now that the leaders who are inhabiting that space are getting the best results for their people, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
So this book is a call to action to those who might feel like they have important things to share with the world and just want that little bit of boost to inspire them to make sure that their ideas are heard, because it is their duty.
I love that. I really do. It is a call to action, but I love how you framed it a little bit earlier, which was it's an ethical duty.
Mm-hmm.
This is, it is now or never around what's going to make life in the world, much better. And to your point, we've got some great examples of leadership and the impact that that has made, certainly here in New Zealand. And unfortunately, watching other parts of the world, the US in particular, just unravel around, poorly guided politics and ill-informed agendas, those types of things. I'll land it there. The book sounds great. Russell, how can people learn more about you and the Pickering Group?
Well, visit thepickeringroup.com. That's our website. And we've got, so that's thepickeringgroup.com. And we've got your wonderful tips and tricks page. We do a regular blog. You can sign up to the blog at the bottom of that page if you'd want to. We don't send you any junk. We'll send you things every couple of weeks. So there's that option. Also, feel free to email me. If people are interested, I have a white paper on persuasive speaking, which takes you through some various models and thinking about it. And I'm happy to send it to anybody who wants it. So you can just email me at Russell, 2 S's, 2 L's, at thepickeringgroup.com. And I'm happy to send you that white paper. It's an easy read, and it sort of outlines a lot of the philosophy behind what I do, and will form the core of the book, certainly the core of the theory side of the book that's going to be coming later in the year. So yeah, that's how people can reach me. And you can, we're on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, so feel free to look me up.
Sure thing. Russell, you are a dear friend. I have enjoyed our friendship and being a part of your life. You have an amazing network of friends, just really beautiful people that I have enjoyed connecting with over the past decade or so. And then you are such a trusted colleague and coach. I have learned a lot from you. We've had a lot of fun working together, but I tell you, you have had major impact on my life. So thank you so much for making the time to come on. And thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. I know you are walking away with some really key insights from what Russell has given us to think about. So everyone have a good week ahead, and we'll see everyone again soon.